Hello everyone, welcome back again to the T.O.A Podcast. I am your host Onvermel, here again today with Ek, 2 weeks in a row. Don't worry, eventually Zach will be back. He'll be back from his vacation. Humans get those sometimes, I've been told.
Once or twice.
Once, maybe, I don't know. I think vacations are a thing. Although he's
a thing when you adults.
But you know, when he's going out visiting he's bringing good news to the south, to the other T.O.A.
To the east.
To the lost T.O.A, to Mithra, to How One, and the 7th T.O.A. He's going off to all of our brothers and sisters. Which one of these days I'll have to get one of them on here again. You can get How One back on here. But, you know, that's beside the point.
There are just technical difficulties to overcome at this point.
Yes. Very big technical difficulties. But, you know, that's just a thing. That's just a mini thing. But again, as I was saying last week, if we can get to 100 subscribers, I will bury Inu in the dirt for your viewing pleasure. I know you've heard this before.
Closer and closer.
We're sitting at 95.
Ooh, that's close.
We were briefly at 96, and then I checked like half an hour later and went down to 95. So
someone actually hit the wrong button, like, oops, I wasn't supposed to do that.
Or they backed out. I mean, I've had people unsubscribe before, but, you know, just
those
saying.
bots got caught.
When I get to 100 subscribers, I will bury Inu in the dirt for your viewing pleasure, so please,
this number goes up every week. Like last I heard it was 87.
Yeah, it's mostly the shorts that are bringing up the subscribers.
Hey,
so
who cares where
the people listening to this podcast aren't helping at all.
They need to do like a short to, you know, maybe get the.
Okay, I have enough shorts backed up for like until the end of October almost. I'm like, I don't have room for one. By the time I get to it, it'll already be there. Too late.
Fair enough.
But I'll say over the last week or so, I've been building Bonkles, and Makutas in general have been in my mind because I'm building Makuta Dentar. For those who don't know, coming actually in some shorts later in September, you'll see the progress I've been making on him so you guys will be able to see what I'm cooking up. You'll be seeing what I'm cooking up, but that's not important what I'm building or such. But it made me thinking because, as we know, Makuta are exceptionally overpowered with 42 powers, including their shadow powers, essentially.
Way too many.
It's like
way too many.
And that got me thinking. I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, the Huna Vakama might have been the best T.O.A to try to attack fighting Makuta, because a Makuta can't use their 42 powers if they can't see you and find you.
Yes, very true.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, I don't know if that was intentional by any means, but the fact that Vakama so happened to have probably one of the most useful masks against a Makuta, because I was trying to think of a mask that'd be equally useful, and I was like,
so much a mask to shield.
The next, yeah, no, even Town Nuva got taken over by the pressure by Bork called with it, so it's like a Makuta could do it. But I was thinking the only other mask that's like close that would be as helpful against a Makuta would be the Volatak, but that's just the lesser Huna.
Yeah, the lamer one.
The lamer Huna, basically. So I'm like, Vakama being the one to fight and best Makuta.
The quick travel is good for escaping.
Yeah, no, there's a few masks that get you out of there, but remember, Makuta can teleport.
Yep.
So if you have a Kakama and a mask that can only teleport, basically, unless you have an All-Mac, which is only 2 in the universe, so unless you're Butaka and Botar, you're not escaping. Even then, Botar can't go through universes, so Makuta could probably still catch up to him if he could figure out where he was going. I don't know how predictable Botar is. He only goes to the bad guy and then back home. The bad guy then back home. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a life outside of his job of being the jailer.
Nope.
I'm pretty sure he's a very dedicated person. But like I said, like the Huno, and this was one thing I was like thinking about back to the podcast Act 10 I first did when we got back into doing these, was when we were talking about masks that were more useful than originally thought. And of course the Huna was always a mask that I think we all knew was a very useful mask. But think about basically pairing up just a single person with the Huna against someone who's got 42 different powers that could kill you. It's like, yeah, you can't kill you if you can't be spotted. Now, can you do much to being like Makuta with the Huna? No, but that gives you a lot of time.
You're still a T.O.A fire.
That can give you a lot of time to think of a plan if they can't find you. Because it's not like Makuta has heat infrared vision. That's surprisingly not a power any mask.
Maybe that is what heat vision actually is?
No, I think it's been proved that heat vision blows heat at you. Which to a T.O.A fire wouldn't do much.
Oh, I'm just getting
also,
hotter.
Actually, that makes me wonder, can a T.O.A fire mask their heat, like, Could they basically, so it doesn't radiate out, so you can't notice it, and he just sucks it in? So it's like, I'm sucking in my heat, so it doesn't radiate out to you to find.
I feel like that's something a toe of ice does.
Well, remember, Vakama used his power to suck in heat to, like, freeze an area because he sucked in all the heat away from it. But could a toe of fire basically mask the heat? I mean, also toe of ice probably could too. That makes
toe
you
of
wonder.
ice sucking in all the cold. Does it make everyone else really hot then?
Yeah, this makes it room temperature. It just becomes room temperature at that point. I don't know.
Can you suck in the cold like you could suck in
Can you suck in the cold?
Let's not think too much about that.
They leave your windows open in winter, you can. But it's like the Makuta, it's like they're way, way too overpowered. Actually, another thing I was actually wondering about Makuta was like, you look at, they're originally created basically by the Great Beings to basically populate the Matoran universe of Rahi, and I think also be there as semi-guardians of each island to some degree. No, they were sworn to protect Matoran as well. They aren't like, I would say, the poster children of protecting Matoran, but I think they're kind of also tasked with like,
You know, that just kind of
governing from behind the shadows. Oh,
if they were created to make Rahi, what purpose does a Rahi serve on the Great Spirit robot?
to make the Matoran not lose their boredom out of sanity. Beast of burden.
Sure.
I like to think that a lot of the stuff in the Matoran universe.
So are Vizrak just a parasite? It's not supposed to be there.
Well, let's be honest. The Makuta at some point started just having fun with what they were making, and started messing with stuff. I feel like a lot of the stuff in the Matoran universe doesn't serve a real purpose other than a social experiment by the Great Beings, wondering how would this play out? Because making your basically like blood cells in a giant robot, like essentially sentient, I feel like you need to populate with a bunch of other stuff, and they would just kind of go crazy.
Maybe they were just like, "Oops, we made these sentient.
We should put these somewhere."
Let's make those semi-sentients.
Which now this is the
Just
thing.
quick, distract them.
One thing I can't remember is whether or not did the Makuta create all the Rahi or just a bunch of Rahi. Because you look at like, did they create every Rahi species or just kind of most ones, and they were just there because. And I still want to know, does Kitango count as a Rahi, or is that just more of a goof? And
That is definitely what I would consider a goof. He is not a Rahi.
because I can't remember if it's been confirmed or not, but I felt like I remember hearing or reading something saying that like his being referred to as a Rahi is more of a Matoran's language rather than actually or the Rahaga kind of word just being like, well, he's a noble creature and all that, rather than there's this.
Perhaps he just is a different level of sentience than your average Matoran.
Yeah, he sees what you don't see. Remember?
I didn't say if
he's a
higher or lower.
Maybe Rahi is just higher sentience than
maybe
regular
Rahi just
Mongols.
means not Matoran.
Well,
That makes it
honestly,
Rahi.
The Torah. That's a Pordika. That's the Torah.
I'm a Torahi.
But like a lot of the things in the Bionicle universe is like when you think about them all working inside a giant robot, pretty much if it's not a Matoran, you wonder what the purpose of them are. It's like Skokti, what were their purpose? What is it? I feel like it was more so most of these didn't have a purpose, and the Great Beings went. I feel like the Great Spirit Robot and all their species inside were two different projects that the Great Beings were like, you know what? I have this project where I'm trying to, create all these, beings and such with different amount of powers and, different abilities. Well, I'm building a giant robot that can have living creatures inside of it.
It's only 1 billion kilometers tall. Okay, don't exaggerate.
It's like, I don't want to, it's like, hey, it's like, where do I put all these things? Hey, my giant robot's got a lot of spare room and could use some.
It's like only 1 million kilometers. It's kind of big.
And so it's
You
like,
can squeeze your little Paraka dudes in there.
he's like, okay, there's a little pocket there. I'll put little holes. I'll put air hole
I'll
pockets.
punch a hole in this one and okay,
You
now
can put that
it
there.
In my own head canon, any being that I make that's not a pre-established thing is like some sentient being that was outside of the island to begin with.
Outside of the robot, or?
Yes, like outside of robots. Like all these random dudes we make, like what are they? Well, they're not actually from inside the robot. They're like something natural native species to the island or something like that.
You mean on Spherus Magna, or
the Snifferax? What is the Snifferax? He is a native of Spherus Magna. An actual native.
I haven't come with any real, although in my general stories I've written, because I've had a fair few short stories, I haven't really, used too many non-species that are, canonical that I would need to think about where they came from or where they go. I don't know about this Con Joe, but it's like, I say like a lot. Oh well, that's not a problem. I ain't Shaggy's. Doobity doobity doo. Dang it. My brain, it's farting up a storm and I can't think straight.
A little bit fried from all that building, perhaps.
It very much probably so. Very much probably so. I had a thought with headcanons, species, thinkety think. Yeah, most of my species for me is just they're in the robot somewhere. We'll leave it at that. But one thing I do have a headcanon that I thought of recently was so the Matoran have been around pretty much since the beginning of Matanui. No one gets born. You just get revived in the Red Star, so there's no new people. It's just the same set of same beings since the beginning, right? Outside of like Rahi or like weird experiments by who knows what. So my theory is that Matoran only have a certain long, like a memory span of like, let's say 5,000 years or something. Where after about 5,000 years, like, you pretty much, so it's like, once you reach that 5,001 year, you forgot your first year, and as you go on, you just keep forgetting. So
you only remember the last 5,000 years of your life.
Exactly. So it's like, eventually, you do change. You don't really remember, let's say, the Matoran Civil War that happened, who knows when. You don't remember, and that's why no one remembers the Great Spirit really being a giant robot rising, because after 5,000 years, most people
I think when you become a Turaga, you have better memory capacity.
I think that's basically why Turaga are in the society to begin with. Because, after you become a Matoran to have work, you become a T.O.A to fight, and
I think with the T.O.A might have less memory capacity.
They're not meant to be around for very long.
No.
They do, and
they're there to fight.
You knew exactly what I was going to say. And so the idea of a Turaga is, let's say they have like a memory span of 50,000 years. Exactly. Where they might still start to forget stuff too eventually, but like they're there to literally record and remember and be like there to guide you, because if beings can live for 100,000 years, what's the point of having elders and such? I mean, honestly, in the case of Matanui specifically, they're the only people that knew Matanui, so that's a different case. But like on Matanui, what's the point of having Turaga Doom be there? Why not just have other Matoran basically be in charge?
Well, you still need leaders.
Yes, and also leadership comes with experience and such. And so also having the Turaga having that longer memory span, I think, for me is my headcanon. So also when you die on the Red Star and then get sent back, you pretty much get a blank, fresh copy of yourself, where
reboot.
Basically, it's like having a simulation. When I know scientists have simulations where they have the same starting parameters and they keep resetting it to see if it plays out differently. And I like to think that for Matoran specifically, if you die and come back, you start out the same way that you started out before, but because also maybe the people you bumped with are different. Maybe you might get a different job. Well, your job would probably be the same, but your life experiences are different. So you might have had a friend for 10,000 years and a buddy Matoran. I was friends with Pookie. Me and Pookie over there were the best of friends, but Pookie died in a rock slide. Now he came back, and all of a sudden he's hanging out with Akmu for some reason. And I don't know this guy anymore, so
Akmu got to him first.
So death from Matoran could still definitely have that's one reason why I think death can still have a lasting impact on these sort of characters, where it's like, this person that you've known for thousands of years is dead. It says essentially he's dead to you, and Matoran might not look at it as the same way as we do, where it's like, yeah, you look at a person who was dead 5 minutes ago walking around on the streets, and it's like, he's dead to me. Like, that isn't my friend, that is Pookie. Yes, that is Pookie, but Pookie's dead. My Pookie's dead. This is a new Pookie.
Or maybe the Matoran, they're maybe not supposed to remember. They're like, this guy died, so everyone else kind of like, oh, he kind of just deletes out of my memory.
I don't feel like Matoran have a deleting sort of thing of that quick of a reaction. But I do think in Matoran culture, there's kind of just that unspoken understanding that when someone comes back, they're essentially
a new person.
You don't bring up old events with people's past. It's something that's like you just don't do. Where it's like, it's at the very taboo thing where it's like, you don't, basically, it's like, it's unspoken, it's just something that's like hardwired into them, where it's like, when someone gets brought back as Red Star, you don't talk about their previous life. You just don't. That will mess up stuff, that will confuse them. You don't give them existential crises. And now I'm thinking of like a black market thing where it's like, for people, also as a Matoran, that there's a good chance you might have died before and you might be a reboot, right?
Oh yeah.
We know about the concept. So imagine there's some Matoran who are going to like essentially the undercity of Metanu and being like, dude, you got these records. It's like the dark archives. Do you have the records of my previous life? And I kind of like that idea that some Matoran are just
There's
really
some pretty sketchy on Matoran.
And I'm not thinking that there's certain Matoran that are like legit, just like if you think of a Matoran like someone like my Dak, right? He started going a little kooky in the head. Yes. Matoran like him, who were like might have peered into stuff that they should have not. I just really like this idea that Matoran's like, don't look into your past, because even if you know that you might have you're a resurrected version, that's normal. But if we start to look into
part of the Matoran programming is they're not supposed to think about their past.
Because let's be honest, something led to your death. You don't want that to come back up. Because if you, let's say you died in a rock slide and you have to work in the rock quarry and you start realizing that's what killed you, would you still be an efficient worker?
You might be afraid to go back.
Essentially, the line "ignorance is bliss" is, I would say, the key word, the key phrase here.
Yes.
And I generally think that's the idea that, like I said, the dark archives. I am now making that 100% part of my headcanon, that there's the dark archives, which actually is the thing I've been needing, because I've been writing a story about Variki with Cortana. Now I'm just gonna briefly mention this because I had the idea for my idea was where coming up with this whole memory loss idea was that Variki was losing his memory quicker than Cortana was, like a lot quicker. And as you were saying, how T.O.A have shorter memory loss, like he's been around longer than he should. And so Cortana can remember it, and he was saying, well, when you forget, and that the idea of going to the dark archives to try and find stuff, it gives him now a location to go to. Yes, will people ever be able to read this story? Maybe. If people show interest in this, or I ever become confident enough to put out my short stories to people, maybe. But at the moment, there's not nearly enough of you to have a voice to make me change my mind.
Say something.
I would say there's about like half a dozen you viewers who have already access to it, because I know about half a dozen of you people who have shared the link to. General, I'm looking at you. But no, the Dark Archives, that's just a cool concept. And honestly, I think with Matoran, like, one of the best things that I think...
The great thing is, like, a random poem Matoran would be like, the Dark Archives? Aren't all the archives dark?
And I think I like the idea of just seedier Matoran, you know, that things aren't perfect on Metronui. Like the idea of the Matoran Civil War, where they just started refusing to work. Like, I like that idea that, like, Matoran by our means are not just obedient, you know, mitochondria in your body. Like, they know the course they're going to have stuff. So, and let's be honest, the great beings are not perfect at creating stuff, so they're going to have a lot of issues.
Maybe we shouldn't have given the white blood cells sentience.
Or as much sentience. I do kind of feel like the Matoran may not have as much individuality at first, and I think over time kind of essentially...
Yeah, for sure.
Evolved, essentially, into it, where it's just like biogenesis, like... There's a term, I think, that's like where it's like spontaneous consciousness came out. Where it's just like all of a sudden, it's like they had this moment of...
I think,
wait a minute.
Therefore I am.
Essentially, they had like that kind of like clarity moment, and also that kind of like spread and built out. And so
just imagine being that first Matoran sentience, looking around at all your brothers, going, "Come on, boys, think!"
Actually, part of me wonders if part of the reason that rocky and like aggressive species are in this Matoran universe is there specifically to give Matoran a higher chance of dying. Because they could just keep, you know, having their memory loss last longer and longer. But I think if you die, you're less likely to figure out your past. But if you're
it's basically resetting the factory settings.
It's just like you know, it's like, yeah, so having, but of course, because these are sentient beings, you gotta have a more complex thing than just a gun pointed at your head and be like, oh, 5,000 years, you're dead. No, have Dark Hunters, Rocky beasts going around, you know. Make it living...
Workplace accidents.
I think all this stuff is more like a simulation, so it's like the Matoran don't realize that they don't have as much free will. It's like, if you make it... Essentially, Manu is just a simulation machine that where it's like everyone thinks this is just the universe. It is the universe to them. No one real... Because in lore, it feels like it's very unclear whether or not people know they're in a giant robot. I think it's very... like I said, I don't know if people do or don't. Like, I know the Makuta do. But, like, you read, like, the stories with Baraki, and it seems very unclear what... They never refer to it as a giant robot. They just say they can take over the Great Spirit. So to me, it feels like it's kind of a vague concept where it's like...
They might realize they're in some...
The universe? The universe!
Yes.
There's just
they
nothing
don't
outside
realize
the
that
universe.
it's just a million-kilometer version of themselves. This bipedal walking thing.
And so it's just like... But the thing is, if you realize you're in there and it's like something... Like I said, everything's just a simulation. You just make it a very realistic one by having all these different moving parts into it. Because, like I said, I really don't think Manui was a single purpose. Because, like I said, its purpose was, I believe, to go out and explore the universe and collect data and then come back and fix the planet. But let's be honest. You didn't have... When you make it that big of a robot, you're not having just a single or two purposes. You will probably have about 1,000 different experiments going on in that robot.
I mean, it's big enough. Just think of all the islands. There's probably literally each island. It's like some sort of miniature... Experiment, yes.
Which is why you probably have... That's why you have species-specific islands. You have the Skokdian Island. You got the Vortex
Let's make this island just a little more violent than that one.
Well, the Skokdi weren't violent until Spyro came along. I can think for the most part, there wasn't that many... I think the most violent ones, you kind of think like the... There's really no one I would say instinctively violent. Outside of what Makuta.
But they had probably like capacity for violence. Let's put their capacity for violence.
Well, there's a question. If you have a capacity of violent species, you put them on an island by themselves without other people, will they eventually just become like aggressive towards other people, like
or themselves or whatnot?
I really, this has been very eye-opening. Even this isn't interesting for people to listen to. This has been helping my own personal thinking noggin a lot. So, for those who are listening up to this point, thank you for indulging in my, well, it's my podcast, my channel. I can do what I want. If people don't watch these podcasts, that's fine. Only about, like, maybe at best 20 do at a time.
And do you listen to the whole thing?
Probably not. Okay. There's, like, probably 5 that do listen to the whole thing. Most people probably don't. That much I can say is that the watch-through rate's pretty low. But that's fine. These are more for my personal benefit. And an excuse to come over to visit my brother now and then. It's a really good excuse. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, visits were pretty rare this last year,
Yes. But that happens.
Visitation.
That's what happens when the population expands in the Gerard Islands.
And you weren't doing a podcast.
Yeah, it was about almost a year. Not quite a year.
11 months. It was basically 11 months.
11 months without a podcast, so what can I say? But we're getting back into it. And I definitely do want to get more conversations about, like, Bonkel lore and such, because I think those are good discussions rather than just me rambling.
But that's what this thing's for. That's you to ramble.
Exactly. That's why I chose a podcast. It's like minimal editing, and I can just talk, which is my 2 favorite things: minimal effort and talking.
With occasional comments by myself or Zakta. You need someone to talk to. Yes.
And I do want to get the 3 of us actually having more of a discussion about, our opinions on stuff, because we do have enough, at least particularly me and Zach, to have enough different opinions on stuff that we can actually have a debate argument. You and me have a lot more similar, I would say, perspectives on stuff, at least in most things.
Certainly, yes, there's a lot of things that we share.
Because what I really want to do is watch all the Bonk movies, having skip the 4th, honestly, and have a discussion about which one's the best. Which also is the debate between the first 2, but that's a debate I want to have. But I want to watch them again just to refresh myself. We did watch Mask Light for Bonkel Day, as one does. 10th 20th anniversary. Old. Do you know the scariest thought I had recently? Was realizing, because I work in retail, so, we have a lot of, people who are in high school and such working there. And, I have a Bonkel tattoo. I'm into Bonkel, so I'm often, talking about Lego to them. And so, I'm mostly into Bonkel. And they look at me and I realize, yeah, they're like 15. So, when Bonkel got canceled, they were like in preschool. So I'm like, right, you people, I forget how much younger.
Some of them might know what Gen 2 is.
I know some of them.
Even that's already 8 years old.
Like, some of them do, but like, as I'm noticing as each years go by, less and less people know what Bonkel's is. I'm like, oh, Bonkel's old. It's becoming old now.
Bonkel's legal drinking age in the world. Like in the U.S., it's legal drinking age.
Yes, my uncle can officially have... They don't need to hide their vodka or green Kool-Aid anymore. They can just have it straight up at the table with the big boy Technic boys.
Even the Nika are legal drinking age here in Alberta.
Yes, which is... Ugh.
No, wait, that's 2006.
That's not...
That's 17 years.
So that means
So
the
next year-
Hordika can drink booze in Alberta.
Scraping in Alberta.
They would. They're depressed enough. They would.
They let's be honest, they were drinking at much younger than that.
Yes. But let's get to conversation about the Matoran. The beginning of this podcast was a little bit weird. I might actually cut it out, honestly. It was a bit of a slow one.
It was a bit of a rambling start.
But the Matoran conversation, that's where things got good. So, thanks for listening. This was an eye-opener. And, for anyone, again, get to 100 subscribers. We want to see a new one in dirt. We will bury the new one. And yes, we'll leave them in the dirt for a while.
Please do this soon.
Maybe I'll put them in the dirt with 100 subscribers and dig them out at 200,
No, it was going to be 222.
Oh, yes, 222 subscribers we would dig them out of the dirt. But yes,
hopefully that's not in the dead of winter.
Hopefully
Otherwise we might have to wait till
then we'll get a pop
or something.
But anyways, I need to use the bathroom.
Me too.
This has been the T.O.A Podcast. I've been your host, Onvermel, and we are retiring from the night.